Hello everybody, welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be going over the second phase, I suppose, of the Six Invitational 2023. That is the bulk of the bracket. We have a few matches still left to be played on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so starting tomorrow. 6 matches. We have the 2 lower bracket quarterfinals, the lower bracket semi, lower bracket final, the upper bracket final, and then the grand final. So 6 teams left, 6 matches left to be played. We'll see what happens, but let's talk about how we got there. And then, of course, the first phase being just the group stage where 4 teams were eliminated and then the bracket was seeded. So we're going to start up here, upper bracket round 1. The teams on top here were the second seeds coming out of their group, and the teams on the bottom were their opponents selected from the third seeds. They got to choose an order of how well they did, so it was Sonics, G2, Heroic, BDS, and they couldn't choose the third seed from their own group. So yeah, Sonics chose Dark Zero, G2 chose Wolves, Heroic chose Oxygen, and BDS was left with W7M. So yeah, I mean, let's start with the first one. Oxygen taking down Heroic 2-0, a close chalet, and then a pretty decisive clubhouse. I definitely expected Oxygen to win this. Heroic was a second seed, Oxygen a third seed, and actually all of the third seeds do end up taking down their opponents, which is a little bit curious, but I thought the wheels were going to fall off Heroic eventually, and I thought Oxygen would be too tough an opponent for them. Maybe it could have gone map 3, but no, only 7 rounds taken by Heroic to the 14 taken by Oxygen. Then we have G2 versus Wolves, a 2-0 for Wolves, but it literally couldn't get closer than this. Double round 15, so maybe G2 could have taken it if they won one of these round 15s. Maybe they would have won on bank. Maybe they could have just won both round 15s and it would have been a 2-0. But no, Wolves finally get a bracket win. They're one of only 2 teams to have gone to all 3 of the majors this year, I believe. It was them and W7M. And Wolves, I think it was the first major, they got grouped, and then the Charlotte, I believe. The next 2, they made it out of their group, but then they fell in the quarterfinals. So they've not made it past 8th place. They have now, as you can see, they're in the top 6. But it started with that win over G2. Sonics versus Dark Zero. I think this was probably the biggest shock of this round. Like BDS W7M could have gone either way. G2 was, I don't know, maybe this was a big shock too. I think Wolves definitely could have taken it, but G2 was the favorites. And then Heroic also being the second seed, maybe, but I expected Oxygen. Sonics, I think a lot of people would have expected them, and Dark Zero, they know their opponents, and Sonics definitely less practiced, just having brought in a new player in Citizen. Dark Zero with the, oh no, I guess they also just brought in a new player. Now that I think of it, brought in Gavini, but this was one to watch. If you haven't watched this, I mean, watch this series, or at least go watch Clubhouse. This was one of the most exciting series in the tournament, and Clubhouse maybe just the most exciting map in the tournament. It was excellent to watch. Go back and watch it. I guess you're spoiled now, you know what happens, but it was quite the spectacle. Sonics with a few issues they need to shore up that you'd expect them to after a little bit of time, given that their new player just came out on the roster and it's such a scary looking roster. But props to Dark Zero for the win there. BDS versus W7M. If I remember right, BDS was up like 6-2 or something on Clubhouse, so they definitely choked this away. W7M took like 6 rounds in a row to win 8-6. And then BDS won dominantly on Cafe, and then another close game on Oregon that W7M took. So a little bit of a scare for them, but W7M, I think at this point, looked like the favorite of the tournament by far. BDS, well, they end up getting eliminated. We'll get there. And the upper bracket quarterfinals, M&M versus Oxygen. M&M had yet to drop a map in this tournament, let alone a series. They dropped their first 2 maps here, both of them in round 15. So this is similar to when Oxygen fought BDS and the Charlotte Major. They made comebacks both maps. I don't remember who pushed overtime and who didn't here, but they had a double overtime win for the 2-0. So Eminem's first 2 map losses send them down to the losers bracket. Team 1, or Los 1 now, versus Wolves. Another 2-0 for Wolves, and another round 15 actually, but the first map in Clubhouse was pretty dominant. Los 1 hadn't lost a series yet. They dropped 3 maps, but they were in 3 different series. So they had a 2-0 and 3 2-1s. And, well, now they have an 0-2 loss, I suppose. Yeah, that means the 2 teams that had not yet lost a series both got 2-0'd immediately in bracket. And, well, they actually end up both getting immediately eliminated here. So, they were hot in groups, but not so much in bracket. Then we have Koi versus Dark Zero, and an 8-7 win and a 7-5 win, so a couple of close maps, but Koi manages to squeak it out. I think Spoit goes like absolutely nuclear in this game. I don't think I was actively watching this one, but he dropped like 1,000,000 kills. And maybe he could have even broke the kill. I don't remember any he had, but maybe he could have broke the kill record if it gone to bank. Who's to say? But we have M80 versus W7M to round out the upper bracket quarterfinals. round 15 win, so M80 barely get a map on the board, and then they get kind of crushed on Clubhouse in Oregon. 3 rounds, 4 rounds. It's a little bit close, but still very comfortable wins for W7M, even though they dropped that first map. And then we hop down to the lower bracket for the first set of eliminations in bracket. Of course, we saw the 3 APAC teams and Team Secret go home in groups, but now we have the first round and actually the second round. So these were all in the same day, these 8 games, and then these were the next 8 games. So Heroic versus Space Station. I think a lot of people would have expected Heroic to win this one based on the fact that, they just did way better than Space Station in groups. I think Space Station did have a really tough group, and Space Station is actually terrible to attack. They got a decent number on Shelly. They got 4 of them here, but in this tournament overall, Space Station just couldn't attack to save their lives. I'm just this is a little bit of a spoiler here, but look, they get 1 attacking win versus M80 over the course of 21 rounds, 12 rounds, and 20 rounds, I guess. So Space Station, they managed to get the 2-0 in a round 15 win and then a 7-4 win, but they didn't look amazing. But still, getting a 2-0 over a team that was a 2nd seed, maybe it gave them a little bit of hope going forward. And then G2 versus FaZe. G2, definitely the better team in the tournament up to this point, and they showed it here. They did take the first loss versus FaZe, but then 2 non-overtime wins to send FaZe packing. FaZe was, I think, the 3rd place team last year at SI, but now, they go out in 13th through 16th place. I'll just say top 16 and things like that going forward. It's a lot easier to say. So I don't know. Maybe Cameraman should not have been dropped. Maybe Vita King, who I think is still just a sub. Supposedly they're supposed to be replacing him. Wasn't the answer. We'll see what happens with FaZe. They might bounce back. They have a pretty talented roster, but it does sound like they're planning to make some changes coming up pretty soon. Sonics versus Astralis. So Sonics, also a very disappointing run here. They only took the 1 loss in groups to M&M, but then they lost to Dark Zero. They lost to Astralis. They got double eliminated by NA immediately in bracket for a top 16 finish. So took the win on border, and 3-7-5 actually. Astralis managed to clinch the last 2 without overtime. And I mean, good for them. It's a solid win that has kept, they've advanced pretty far from that point as well. BDS versus Liquid. This is a rematch of the grand final of the previous major. This is something that people expected over here in bracket, not over here. But both these teams weren't as good in groups as people expected them to be, especially Liquid. BDS, not terrible, but not spectacular, like you might have expected based on their recent performances at things. 7-4, 7-4, 7-4, but the latter 2 being for BDS, eliminating Liquid from the tournament. And we'll see what happens. Palunesque, there might be another roster change coming here. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's always disappointing seeing them lose because a lot of people expect to see them win, want to see them win, whatever the case. M80 versus Space Station, close on Theme Park, but then SSG just gets crushed on Clubhouse. Only 1 attacking win. Back to the drawing board. This is actually as well as they did at the last SI. They placed top 12. Then they placed top 12 now, and back then they were the lowest placing NA team, but now they actually outplaced Sonics, which is a little bit funny. Dark Zero versus G2. G2 sends Dark Zero packing, so another loss for Canadian at the hands of Fabian, who's the coach of G2, and another loss for Canadian at the hands of Alamau, who sent him home when Alamau was on Team 1 and Canadian was playing on Space Station back in SI 2021, I think. So dominant Skyscraper, then close bank, but not good enough. So another NA team eliminated, and then Los 1 versus Astralis. And, this is a relatively close one. I guess dominant win for Los 1 on Skyscraper. Maya was going crazy in the series. I think he was their lowest rated player coming into this, not by a massive margin. They were all pretty tight, and then ended up their highest rated player because he dropped more 40 kills, 41, 40 something kills, a lot of kills, but not enough to win. Round 15 on border goes to Astralis. So they've had some excitement in this tournament. We'll talk about it in a minute. And then finally we have M&M versus BDS, and this is a rematch of the EUL finals that just happened a little bit ago, and BDS took that, I think, pretty convincingly 2-0. And M&M actually takes the first map, but then they get 7-0'd and then 7-4'd. So BDS stays alive for now. And what actually happened I don't remember. This is on the 15th, and then this is also on the 15th, right? So I think this happened next. Oxygen versus Wolves, and close win for Oxygen, and then less close win for Wolves, and then an even less close win, Oxygen sending Wolves to the lower bracket, and this secures Oxygen top 4. This is their best performance ever, I think. They got top 4 at Charlotte. Foxay way back in the day got top 4 at SI, but that was when They didn't even have like lower bracket. I think they lost to G2, but this is like guaranteed top 3. That was 3rd/4th place. So best placing, I think. I don't think they've made it to a major grand final. And I believe this is their best placement in SI. So Newers is going absolutely insane. High traded player in the tournament. If they can somehow manage to win versus W7M, which I don't think very many people expect, it'll probably be off the back of a monstrous performance from Newers and also a decent performance from everyone else. We'll have to see. Probably Sweater's going to have to step it up a little bit, and I mean, maybe the rest of the players, because Newers has been putting in some massive work, especially compared to most of his teammates. Anyways, Koi getting 2-0'd by W7M, only getting 3 rounds. They got 7-0'd. There is a lot of talk of Kanto being replaced on this roster, and that, so there was a rumor going around that Kanto was not only being replaced, but he found out, and like right before the series or recently, whatever the case, and that was the reason that Koi was like playing disjoint. I don't know, whatever. I think the rumor has been disproven by the actual members, or I mean, if it is true, they said it was true, whatever the case. I don't really want to speculate on it too much. Anyways, W7M with the convincing victory, sending Koi to the lower bracket. And then we have M80 versus G2, a couple close-ish maps, but G2 gets the double non-overtime win, sending another NA team packing down to only 2 NA teams. And then Astralis versus BDS. Yeah, most people expected BDS, and Astralis, they were definitely underrated coming into the bracket, but rightfully so. They didn't have a good group stage showing. They ended up automatically in the lower bracket. They they weren't playing that well in NAL this last stage, even though they were off the back of 2 back-to-back first place finishes. So these guys are hot sometimes, they're cold sometimes. Shuttle had been really bad in this tournament. He still might be the lowest rated player, but I think they had 9 clutches. Astralis had 9 clutches in the series. BDS had like a few, but 9 over the course of 12, 20, over 32 rounds. Like, they clutched over a quarter of the rounds. That is insane, right? Did I count that? 20, 32 rounds over 9. Yeah, over a quarter of the rounds, they won a 1vx. Maybe some of them were 1v1s or whatever, but still, unbelievable stuff. And yeah, sending BDS packing at only a top 8 finish, which is they got a 4th place finish in 2020. I think they got a top 8 finish in 2021, and then they fell in group stage last year, that whole Rafal thing, and then another unspectacular SI for them. So their last 3 SIs have not been very impressive, but they still did win quite a lot of stuff this last year. EUL finals, the Yanchming Major, the Saudi Arabia Invitational, which is like a non-official thing, the Japan Invitational, also a non-official thing. But anyways, they certainly would have liked to take down this event. This is the World Championship, the biggest one, the biggest Siege event, and they had all the momentum. Them or W7M were probably the favorites, but no, yeah, they fall here, and that catches us up, I guess. Oxygen versus W7M. Both these teams are already secured top 3. The winner's going to go to grand final. The loser's, of course, going to go to the lower bracket final, and then we'll have Wolves versus G2 to go to semis, loser semis, and Koi versus Astralis. So 3 EU teams, 2 NA teams, and 1 LATAM team. W7M, most certainly the event favorite in most people's eyes, and on paper, and just in all regards. I mean, Oxygen, maybe they can get the upset here, but I don't think anybody's really betting against W7M to take the whole thing, especially because, like I mentioned before, they went to all 3 majors this year. They got grouped in the first one, but that one's a little bit of an outlier. They were playing remote on LAN, this weird stuff. It was their first event. The next 2, they made it to bracket. They made it out of their groups, and then they got, was it top 4 both times? Or was it top, I think it was top 4 both times. They lost 1 to FaZe, they lost 1 to Liquid, and those are both LATAM teams. There are no LATAM teams at this event, so they're going to have to stop. They're going to have to be stopped by another region if it's going to happen. We'll see. EU is looking scary. Wolves, I think, have looked decent in bracket. G2, even though they took that loss relatively early. Where is it? Yeah, to Wolves. Oh, I didn't even realize that. Yeah, that's a rematch of that. They've looked pretty solid through this event, defying most people's expectations coming into it. And then Koi, another major champion from this year, not the last event, but the one before that. They are the only team that could, I guess, repeat for this year. Dark Zero's out, and BDS are out. And we'll see if Astralis can get it done. But I guess what I was saying and what I lost my train of thought of was the last 2 events were won by EU teams, so we'll see if they can win it here. Half the remaining teams are from EU, so let's see if they can get it done. I think I'm cheering for Astralis, not only because they're sort of underdogs, but I was cheering for them back in back in Charlotte, only to watch them be eliminated by Dark Zero in the grand final. But I'll be cheering for them because it's been nice to watch them make this sort of underdog run, and I guess Oxygen being the other NA team, certainly against W7M, I'll be cheering for them, but uphill battle. Anyways, I've sort of been rambling for a long time. It's been like 15 minutes of video, so yeah, with all that being said, leave me a like, leave me a subscription. Those would be appreciated. Any sort of comment, feel free to leave them below. Catch you guys in the next video.